Get started. So, well, thank you guys for joining today. I know out of all the topics we could talk about, safety and protection is not always the most fun one. But I have learned, especially recently, it's a very important one. So we always say to our leaders, and even as our leadership team and our staff, we say every church is one mistake away from shutting down. Because it only takes one really big incident, one really big hurt for us to lose everything that many of us have worked years and years and years to build. And so here at Grace, we take protection and safety very seriously. Especially like we've always taken it seriously, but especially over the last year or so, we've gotten really serious about what does this look like? How does it function? And how do we make sure we do it with excellence? There's a church not too far away from us who over the last year, it's come to light that their leadership was making really poor choices. A lot of children were hurt in the process of that. And as a result of that, this church is in the process of having to like shut its doors. Some people are in prison now that should have been there probably a long time ago. But with that, a lot of families have started attending our church recently who have come out of that situation. And we've had to sit down with a lot of them. And they've all come just asking, they're like, before I even drop off my child, I need to know, what does safety look like? Like, what are you doing? And we've had to say, like, there's no bad question. They can ask us anything. And as leaders, we should be able to answer any question they have openly and honestly. And they should be able to check all the things behind the scenes to know that we are who we say we are, because their children have been hurt. And it's hard watching these families walk in the door and that lack of trust they have of the church. So like I said, so thank you for coming today. I definitely want to have time for discussions so you guys can ask questions. We can maybe even as a group help each other. I'm going to try to get through some of this very quickly. I got all this in a document that I shared with Stephanie, and I can reshare it, or tell me the best way to share it with everybody, just so you can have it in writing, just in case I talk too fast, which I do sometimes. So, but
Before you talk, Angie, or do you
yeah,
want?
you can, if you can share it before I talk, that's great, because that way they can follow along
I'll
if they
have to.
want to, or at
I'll
least
work
they know
on it.
it's there.
I'll
Okay.
work.
All right. So like I said, we're talking about child safety. We all know that there's dangers in the church sometimes, there's dangers outside of the church. And so what does it look like to keep our children safe? But first of all, like, why does it matter? It matters because protecting children is our spiritual calling. But it's also a legal responsibility that we have. And so as the church, we should be the safest place for a child to be outside of their home. And so we should take that we should protect that. And one thing we know is a lot of parents, when they come to church, they want to have trust within us. And the way that we build trust with parents is to show them that we are safe and that we've considered their child's safety ahead of time. And so I'm going to explain kind of what this looks like here. So the 4 shields of safety that I want to kind of touch about, we call it the STOP framework here at our church. The first is S. So we're going to talk about screening. The first part of making sure that your ministry is safe is making sure that you have a really great screening process. It's important to avoid negligent hiring. And I'm not just talking staff, I'm talking volunteers. And making sure that we're avoiding negligent hiring and placement through a bunch of different things. Because it takes one bad person to get through the system. And so I know a lot of us, we many times are desperate for leaders. We have holes that need to be filled. And sometimes we want to rush that process because we just need somebody in the rooms. But it's so important to take your time and be diligent about who you're putting in there. And so here's a couple things that we do. It's a process. It can get done quickly if you need it to, but what this looks like here for us is, first of all, every leader is asked to fill out an application. And that's like the first door into our ministry. That application, the questions that are on there are decided by our church leadership. So they do have faith questions on there, like, do you know Jesus? How long have you been at Grace? Tell us about your faith story. Is there another area that you serve already? And so we have some faith questions. We also have legal questions on there that are like every church probably has some ties to legal counsel and stuff that it will say, like, have you ever been arrested? Do you have anything on file? And so there's a mix of all those questions on there. We also ask for permission to run a background check. That's something that years ago when I first got in ministry, most people didn't do. And now it's like we should all be doing that. And then the other thing we ask for is 2 references of people that have seen you working with kids in some form. And so we have our application. From there, we run a background check. We learned probably like a year and a half ago, our church was using just a simple company that was running background checks for us, and it was cheap. And then we found out that the background checks they were running were not actually the ones legally deep enough to actually cover our ministry. And so we, over this past year, had to contact every leader and redo everyone's background checks and repay for those because and like really going through all that process, we learned the background checks were I could have probably done better on my own through a Google search, you know? And so make sure if you're doing background checks that they are appropriate in how safe they are and what, like the depth they go. We always do 2 references. We ask a couple questions. Have you seen this child work with children or students? Would you feel safe letting them work with your children or students? And then how have you seen them interact in stressful situations? Because a lot of times that's where leaders can struggle. And then from there, you can ask other questions about strengths and weaknesses and stuff, but always get 2 references. We always have them go through like an interview shadowing process. So every leader is going to meet with myself or someone on our team. And so we're going to talk to them about just who they are, their faith story in person. I'm going to answer any questions they have about what it looks like to serve in our ministry. And then from there, they're going to start shadowing. And that looks like they are paired with a really like one of my best leaders. That person's going to show them what a weekend looks like, how it functions, and they're going to shadow until we feel confident that they can lead and that they finished the whole process. The next thing they're going to do after that is they are going to attend a training meeting. And so that's the next thing on our stop. So first you have S, and that's screen. Like I said, that will look different for every church, but as a church, come up with a process. Like, what are you screening? What does that process look like? What is step 1, 2, and 3? That's also, the screening is where it's really important to make sure that your screening process matches what is expected through your insurance company. So a lot of your insurance companies actually have a whole list of things that you're supposed to be doing. And if you do them and an incident happens, your church is covered. If we're not doing them, they can take away our coverage when bad things happen. So talk to your insurance companies. It's not fun, but you got to do it. So the next part, like I said, is training. It is so important to have different times of training. So like I said, we have a training that they will attend before they ever really start fully serving. In our training, we talk a lot about what does it look like to work in kids ministries here at Grace. So what are like my specific expectations of them? Like, and those are sometimes there's things like, I want you to know their names. I need you to show up on time. I need you to let me know if you're coming. But a part of that training towards the end is we do a whole safety training. And I can share all these these documents with you guys. And you can take them, you can edit them, you can do whatever you want to with them. But we have a whole safety guide, and we talk through how do you recognize abuse? How do you recognize when harm is being done to a child? How do you make sure that your ministry is safe, what you're doing is appropriate? We talk through boundaries and guidelines. And a lot of times when we do this with our leaders, we do it because we say, like, I want to make sure our kids are safe, but also I want to make sure every leader that steps into my ministry is also safe. Because we live in a world where, unfortunately, sometimes accusations that are not true do happen. And I want to make sure that every person that walks in here, whether you're the adult leader or the child, that you are safe and that you know that you matter to us. Because it takes one false accusation to really ruin a person's life and livelihood and stuff. So during that training, like I said, we'll cover all of those different things. After that training, every leader takes a quick quiz. Quizzes are easy to create through Google or through your church database. And so we do a quiz and we sit there and we take those quizzes together with all of our leaders. And we talk through every single question that we have. And those quizzes are for anyone who works through infants all the way through 18 years old. And so that way our training is the same for anybody. So if you've gone through this training, you know how to do student camp and you know how to work in the nursery with diapers, because we just want to fully equip them for those things. So like I said, S is screening, T is training. With that training, we do, like I said, we do that big training at the beginning. Every week we have a huddle. During that huddle time, I usually pick one small part of that safety training, and I'll pick one thing and I'll go over it. And so like the one I have this weekend is bathroom policies. Like I'm just going to remind our leaders, hey, we're never alone with a child in a bathroom. And so it's one quick sentence, and I'm going to keep doing that because sometimes we need reminders to really get good at what we're doing. And then we have yearly trainings to kind of re-up on all these things. And we usually do those right before camp, just so that way when we go to camp, we're really thinking through safety again. The next, if I'm talking fast, flag me down. Sorry, I talk fast. The next one is O, and that's just how you operate. One of the biggest things I find is we'll go through all these trainings and we'll say all these things, but oftentimes we find ourselves not doing what we say we're going to do. And so we have just told our leaders, this really matters. Like I'm not saying this and then we get to do whatever we want to. And even when it comes to checking kids out, like we have tags and we're checking every kid's tags, including my kids' tags, including our pastor's kids' tags. And the way that we make sure that we operate is we as leaders give other leadership the opportunity to come in and check out and make sure we're doing what we're supposed to. So I get audited. We have our executive pastor comes in and he has a list of what we're supposed to be doing. And he walks our spaces and it's a surprise audit. And he comes in and he looks and he audits us. And then he checks out what my leaders are doing. And he'll ask my leaders, hey, what's the bathroom policy? Hey, what's the checkout policy? And then after that, then I would sit down with him and he would tell me how it's going. But that's just a part of giving our team the ability to audit me and for me to audit other people to make sure that as a whole church, we're holding ourselves accountable to do what we're saying to do. And that's hard sometimes to be like welcoming other people in to see if you're doing it right. But when we did that and we started doing that, it really does make you think twice before you stop following the rules. I think my leaders and my parents also appreciate it because they know that it matters because I'm willing to get judged on it. So make sure that you operate the way that you're supposed to operate. It's not just talk or something written on paper. And then the last one, this is where I think sometimes we can not do the hard work to make sure we're ready for this. But the next one is plan. You need to make sure that you're prepared for when things go wrong. You have to know how to respond calmly and appropriately. You need to know how to support victims. And you need to know how to document things and do things in a way legally that anything that happened, if you had to go to court, things would hold up in court. This takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of communication with an insurance company, usually with a lawyer, usually with your executive and leadership team, because a lot of times we assume that we're going to do something one way, and that way is often not the way that it needs to happen for it to be held up in court, or if we were ever have to testify or to really support a victim. So like I said, so the way that we work through this is stop. So screen, train, operate, and plan. Do you guys have questions so far before I get to some of the other stuff?
I had one. So
Yes.
how long, like you laid out everything in the screening time.
Yeah.
And I appreciate what you said because everybody needs volunteers every week. So sometimes the scrambling does happen. How long does it take you in your process to get a new volunteer completely done?
So we do training meetings once a month. So if you start like the week after a training meeting, it might take up to a month to get fully, we call it CAP approved. So we have child abuse prevention policy, is how we would frame it here. So to be fully CAP approved, it could take up to a month. If you start like 2 weeks before that meeting, I can get things done pretty quickly within that 2 weeks because most background checks are done um, digitally so they can come back within 24 hours. So as long as people are filling out their forms, as long as their references text us back, sometimes that holds us up because some people's references one person replied, stop. And we're like, oh, hey, this is for real. I'm not AI. And so that can take some time, but I would say probably a month at the longest. But also keep in mind, once they've had that background check done and that application filled out, they can be shadowing, like in our area, they can be shadowing with a CAP approved person until they finish that training, but they will never be alone. They will never be leading a conversation with any of the kids until they're fully CAP approved. And some of that is, I just also need to know that you love Jesus and you're going to teach the right things too. So, but a month probably at the longest, but it could be shorter. Yeah. So, some things to consider when you're talking through what does safety look like at your church. Some of these are going to be common sense, but one, like physical safety. What does physical safety look like at your church? It's important to walk on a regular basis all of your environments. Are they safe? Is there anything that we need to replace or change up? Things get broken. And so, like, are there things in your area that are not physically safe for the kiddos that are in that space? I know one time there was, like, at one of my old church, like, somebody had brought in one of those like slide things, like the little type ones. But they put it in a room where the kids were like, "I'm just going to jump off of this, or it's going to topple over," and we're getting like split lips. I know here at the church I'm at now, they had these shelves and they were like right at the height of a second, third grade head. And within weeks, like some kids are running around the room and they don't look and they crack their head open. That was disgusting. But, so it's like, I don't need a shelf at that height. And so it's just really taking time every once in a while to kind of look at your spaces. Is it physically safe for the age group that you have in there, the way that you're using that room? So even like shelves, making sure they're anchored to the wall. Sometimes we move a shelf into a room, we don't anchor it and it falls over. So like, what is the physical safety that you need to consider? The next one is emotional safety. I love kids. I love teenagers. Sometimes they can push your buttons. Sometimes your leaders feel stressed and overwhelmed because a certain kid has not followed any of the rules. They're talking back, they're being rude. And so we do a lot of training with our leaders on like, how do you respond in a way that can be firm, and you can, command respect, but also we have to be kind. We have to be gentle. We have to be respectful and honoring with our words. And also letting our leaders know, like when you do feel like you're about to hit that place where you're probably not going to make the best choice in your reaction, it's okay to step away and get support. We tell all of our leaders, I will be the one that has the hard conversation. They don't have to have the hard conversation. Like I can, in those moments, because I've not been the one in the trench with them, maybe that moment, I can step away and have the conversation with the parents. I can talk to that child, because we have to watch the way we speak to kids. And unfortunately, I can't always say that every leader that walks in here, without accountability would say the right thing. And so just making sure we train our leaders on how to be respectful. We always say like sarcasm is fun with a fifth grader, but not all fifth graders get sarcasm, and some thinks it's funny and some people are hurt by that. So how do we use our words wisely? And just like I said, letting every leader know when you feel like you are hitting that point, ask for help, call in some reinforcements. The next one is like relational safety. This comes with like we don't text kids. We don't text students without parents' permissions. We're making sure that we tell our leaders all the time, like, don't ever be on Snapchat or something like that. Don't be deleting messages. Do things in a group text if you're texting students. And even for kids, like, what does it look like? Like, how do you hug a child in a way that's appropriate? Because I don't want to be a ministry that doesn't hug or that doesn't give high fives, but there's an appropriate way. Another example of this is like kids sitting on laps. And so we always say in our ministry, like when they're little, you're going to hold them. When they're in preschool is when we start training them from going from sitting on my lap to sitting to my side. But by kindergarten, that's a firm rule. We don't sit on laps in kindergarten. I have to say that to my teen leaders all the times because they just love kids. But I just say we don't sit on laps in kindergarten. And so we're going to move them to the side and move them to the side because that's just a relational safety thing that we have to consider. And sometimes I have to tell kids, even in kindergarten, kids, we don't sit on each other's laps in kindergarten. So I'm going to teach my kids to interact in that way too. Another physical safety thing, I'm going to go back up. Make sure that you have a plan for bathrooms and diaper changing. Every church is going to differ on what that looks like. Every insurance policy will probably differ on what that looks like. Some of our churches maybe have the luxury to have kids only bathrooms. Some of us do not. And so what does it look like when a child has to go to the bathroom? How do we make sure that they're safe in that space? And so I can tell you what our church does. But like I said, every church will be different. For us, diaper changing, only adults above the age of 18 who have a background check can do diaper changing. We say only women can do diaper changing. And we say it's not because we don't trust the men, but it's because unfortunately, those are the ones who are usually accused of doing things, even if they haven't. And so we tell our men leaders, like, we want to protect them. And so we say adult female leaders, all of our diaper areas, are in a classroom setting where other people are going to be, but also like not visible to the world. And so that is diaper changing. We also say after the age of, so 4 years and up, so preschool and up, we do not assist in the bathroom in any way. And so if a child does need help, we call a parent in to come and help with that. Like if a child has an accident, we always have extra clothes and things like that on hand. But we just ask a parent to come in just to ensure that our leaders are safe and no accusations are happening. And then we do have, thankfully, we are blessed to have a bathroom that's secure. So it's a kids only bathroom. And on the weekends, our leaders know, like, none of us that use that restroom, that is a kids only bathroom for that. So that's kind of what that looks like here. But like I said, check with your insurance policy, know your space and what works and stuff, but think through those two things. Those are huge. Let me see. My next one, I'm trying to look at time. Okay, I got just a few more minutes. All right, I'll talk quicker. The next one is equipping your volunteers for real situations. So like I said, for us, we say on repeat, never be alone with a child and never leave a child alone. Those are two things I think they hear us say in their sleep probably at this point, because those are two ways that you can quickly find yourself in a situation where you could be accused of something or something could happen. So never be alone with a child, never leave a child alone. We always talked about maintaining visibility when things are happening. The next thing is reporting any suspicious behavior immediately. We do have a reporting system where like for us, like it's not, my volunteers, if ever they feel like something needs to be reported, we always ask them to lead up so we can lead out together in a really safe way. And so I always have like a QR code so we can quickly document those things and get those things reported as soon as we need to. But I always ask them, instead of just trying to report secretly, if they see something, I don't want them just going straight there. I want them to lead up so we can all go out together and to make sure that they know that we are doing this together as a team And that would go for like first aid, emergencies, suspicious of abuse, anything else like that that we see. We also make sure that we talk to our kids about safety, about like tornado, fires, if things happen. Um, One of the things that we have is when a child checks in, they wear a tag and then they put a secondary tag on a clipboard. And every room has that clipboard. So if we ever have to leave the space, I automatically know who's in my care. And so I know who the kids are. I know how to get all their parents because I have that clipboard with that second tag on there. I know recently we had to go a lot through, like last year was there a lot of tornadoes in Ohio, which is not normal. But now if it rains, every kid's like, where do I go for tornadoes? So we talk through that now. So, because it scares them. So that's just some like things to equip your leaders on. And then I just want to land, the last thing is like when things go wrong, it's so important to be ready and not reactive. So know how to report, know the numbers to call, know what your leadership says about reporting. I have worked with some pastors who have very different ideas on what it looks like to report, and how to report and who you're supposed to talk to first. So definitely know what your leadership says. And then know those numbers and know how to do it in a way. I know it's important to do things in writing and to write as much as you can. We are not the ones who are supposed to be the detectives, but we are supposed to get the information. And the more that you can get in writing, the better. The more details you can get, the better. If your church has cameras, like know how to, like what's the time frame to get that information saved and documented. And then also, I always say it's so important that when appropriate, and as much as it's appropriate, we always keep parents in the loop on everything that's happening. I want to be very transparent with our parents. So I want them to know that the church is not going to hide if something happens. We're going to be very open with that. And they're going to be able to see what's happening and hear what's happening and have the information as soon as possible when appropriate. Because that's how you build trust with your parents. So, like I said, I sent this on to you guys. But are there questions? Does anybody do anything at your church that you think is like, maybe you've learned something along the way that you have to share, or something that you're doing that you think has been like really, really helpful in this?
I don't have any questions, but I just want to say that this has been very helpful information. I've been jotting notes about things that I want to check with my pastor on because I know our some things like practices have changed as they needed to along the way, but our actual like official child safe policy needs some updating. And so this has been very helpful information.
Oh, good, good. I'm gonna send you guys, we have our, like our document of like all of our safety stuff that our leaders read through, that I'm gonna send you as well. And I can even send you like a link for like some of the questions we ask and stuff. So I'm gonna send all that to Stephanie to share with you guys as well.
Yes, that'd be amazing. Is that the safety guide? Is you're gonna send that as well?
It is, yes, yeah, and it's, I mean, it's pages long, but it talks through like how do you notice things, what not to do, what to do if you're in a situation, how to document. So I'll send you guys everything we have.
I have never heard of the audits, and I think that that is like crazy and like that it would be. I mean, I can see it being so beneficial, and it just puts leaders on a different level of expectation. Like, hey, like we're going to be audited. Like, are we actually doing this? I think that was a big takeaway for me. So good.
Yeah, like I said, it's scary knowing they might come in, but at the same time, I'm
Right.
like, but if I'm really doing what I say I'm going to do, then I should be ready and I shouldn't be scared. And I think it helps me continually keep in the back of my mind that I need to keep training and keep saying the things. So it holds me, it's scary sometimes, but it does hold us accountable. So
Yeah. I just found out we have a couple more minutes. They're running a little over, so please ask some more questions. What thoughts do you guys have?
I have a quick story about lap sitting. It has happened years and years and years ago, but we had a second grade girl whose dad was leading that day, was in charge of the second graders, and we were in large group, and she was having a bad day. And so she wanted to sit on dad's lap. Well, we're in large group. We were the people in there. There was lots of adults around. Everybody knew what was going on, and so I allowed it. I happened to be out in the hallway while somebody else was on up front, and two women walked by, looked in the window, and said, "Why is that little girl on that man's lap?" Now, so everyone in the room knew what was going on. Everyone in the room knew that it was her dad and it was appropriate, but the two people walking by did not. So it wasn't, now there was no accusations made, nothing ended up happening other than me immediately going, "Oh, that's why we got to follow the rules, even if we know the situation would be appropriate."
I love that. That reminded me, like I've had to say this a lot, even with staff, like we have to watch disciplining our own children in that space because if they see me in the way I would discipline like my own child, it's going to be different. And so it's like that recognition that even I have to watch how I interact with my kids and they have to watch how they interact with their kids because you're right. When people walk by, they might be like, can't believe they would say that. So no, that's a great reminder. Are there any other resources or anything else like that that would be helpful for me to see if I have that I can share?
What program do you guys use for background checks? I know of the program Protect My Ministry. There's another one that's really good that I'm trying to do a little research with. It's called Ministry Safe. They have a lot of videos and a lot of training if you guys want to look into that. Trying to do some research for you all and putting that out there, but I haven't gotten to all of that yet. But what do you use, Angie, for that kind of thing?
Yeah, so we use Protect My Ministry. I'm not sure what they used before this, but like I said, we did find out the hard way. All these background checks were like, I mean, I don't even know what they checked for. Like it was bad. Like when our insurance company saw that, they're like, this was a waste of all your money. Like, I could have found them on Facebook and got more information. So we now go through Protect My Ministry. It's a little bit pricier, but it's a lot safer. So
There's another organization, I think it's called Darkness to Light, where they do trainings to help recognize abuse. That's just another one I've heard. I haven't taken the training, but I've heard it's really wonderful.